Great, Michael. Good to see you.
Hey, man, I appreciate conversation number one, kind of starting with nothing and building an empire. It actually brought me back to someone who is really well known, at least in the social media space, that I think kind of did the same thing, right? He pulled himself up from nothing, and now I think last I read owns his companies own a real estate portfolio over $1 billion. I think it was 1.4 billion last time I saw, and that is of course Grant Cardone. I know you know him. I know you've actually interviewed him a couple of times, or at least once that I know of. So I was curious, when you think of Grant Cardone and what we just talked about, starting from nothing and building an empire, I mean, kind of did it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've had a couple of conversations and talked about his story and his journey. And a lot of people don't know his complete story or journey, but he was a drug addict at one time. So he started with even less than nothing. From that standpoint, through drug addiction, things like that. And he started selling cars, became a top salesman, and then decided that he wanted to go out and follow the Tony Robbins model, the Jim Rohn model, the Zig Ziglar model, and become a trainer and teach other people how to sell cars. Because it was such an inefficient business and he was doing so great. He's like, man, I want to teach other people how to do this. So he would literally travel around the country, show up in an area, call on car dealers and say, hey, I'm Grant Cardone, top car salesman over here. I want to come show you guys how to sell cars. And they would say, no, get lost, do not. He would show up anyways, So that's how he got started, and he created programs, but literally he would travel around from town to town all the way around the country. And, this was 20 years ago when he started all this. So it's only been about 20 years. He's 60 now, 61, 62. So he was in his, late 30s, early 40s when all this happened. And he had just basically kind of spun his wheels his entire life up to that point. He went to college, and he's got a degree and all that. So he's educated. He's not stupid. He's a smart guy. He's a little crazy, but he's smart. A little wild, but
a little
he's
wild.
An entertainer.
Yeah, he's an entertainer
too.
Oh yeah, no question.
So he had this idea, he had this concept, he believed in himself, and he did it and he got it done. And he went after it and did whatever it took. And where the light bulb really went off for Grant was about 10 to 12 years ago when, number one, he started embracing social media and promoting himself and realizing, doing this daily show that he does. He's been doing that forever. He started doing a daily internet show on YouTube and on Facebook and, built a big following over the last 10 years and then spent a lot of money on marketing. So that's really where the light bulb went off for him in terms of putting himself out there, teaching and training and creating these systems. And then he's, written books and done courses, all these different things. And, his books aren't what, like he says, they're not best sellers
or best written.
They're not best written, but they're best sellers, so they're not written like a, literary genius or anything. They're just simple how-to business books on sales and things like that. So he's done all these things, which are typical of like a Tony Robbins or a Zig Ziglar or somebody like that. And, Gary Vaynerchuk, he hasn't really done all that. He wrote a book or he's written a couple of books, but he hasn't done all these other things. That was his model. Then he, invested in his first rental property. It was a single family home, bought that, rented it out, realized there's no money in this. He had a bad tenant experience where he's like, I'm getting rid of that. And then he bought I think it was a 20 unit or 22 unit building in California was his first multifamily. And that's when that light bulb started going off for him in terms of the scale of multifamily properties. And he started taking all the money that he earned in his businesses and investing in real estate, kind of like I did, but he had a different business model where mine was development. His was multifamily.
Yep.
And he's just been on that tear ever since. Then he learned how to raise capital probably about 5 or 6 years ago and learned how to syndicate real estate deals, raising capital from others to invest in these deals. And he's blown up his social media platform to be able to do that. So everything he does now, the purpose of everything he does is to raise capital for his real estate deals. And, he uses the cash flow from all his business to invest in real estate. Yeah. And he went from that one house to a 22 unit building. He flipped a house that he owned in California, put that into multifamily, his condo in Florida and all that. And just has built it up into, probably $1 billion worth of a, portfolio plus or minus now.
Yeah. The thing that I appreciate about Grant, you actually covered in the story, but I want to hit it again. A lot of people came to Grant. First off, when you say Grant Cardone, you either like him or hate him, right? He's polarizing, and I think he enjoys that. I don't think he wants people in the middle. I think you either like him or hate him. The thing that I want to go back to is that single house experience and then moving to multifamily. As I understand the story, there's a gap in time, but the gap in time, right? He gets the house. I think two girls move in. It works, cash flow works. Then they leave. Then it's the winter, and he can't do this, can't do that. He sells it, makes micro money, but he makes some money, didn't lose. And then what he did is he appreciated multifamily. But as I understand the story, he started really grinding at his day job, traveling around the country, doing more, savings, right? So he hustled like no other time in his life, probably. He was saving money, bank. And then he spent 3 years learning multifamily. I don't think enough people realize that. 2.5 to 3 years. He says different numbers in different videos, but certainly more than 2 years learning, right? So he was committed. He did the work. He would travel the country like nobody's business for 5 days a week. Then he would learn real estate on the weekend. People need to realize that the Grant Cardone, $1 billion in real estate started with 2 years of effort in doing the work. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, not to anyone, not even Grant.
Right. And, like I said in the other video, there's a lot of ways you can make money. You can make a lot of money in real estate, but real estate will not make you any money. What makes you the money is your knowledge. It's what you know. And it's what you know when you know it, applied to the right vehicle at the right time. It's the right information applied to the right vehicle at the right time in the right way with the proper leverage. That's where, scale happens. And yeah, love him or hate him, and the funny thing is, especially with the world of online, people love to be haters and they love to be, snarky and sarcastic. Whether you love somebody, hate somebody, agree with them, don't agree with them, you can learn from everybody, the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. So it doesn't matter. You need to be a seeker of wisdom and look to learn in every situation. The minute you think you know everything and somebody knows nothing and you can't glean anything from anybody or any piece of content or any book or video or course, the minute you think you can't learn anything, you're done. You're over, and you will never get to the next level that you're trying to get to. And one of the things that I realized early on, and I was very fortunate, was I knew my limitations. I knew that I didn't know anything. And I knew that the more I learned, the more I realized there is to learn. The farther you go, the more you realize how far you can go. And, the biggest thing I realized is none of us is smart as all of us. So you want to have the right people around you. And, again, so there's a fine line there, right? You're an entrepreneur. You've got to charge, you got to lead the path, you got to make your own decisions. You can't, let people make decisions for you, but you can take information to make your decisions and hopefully make better decisions, to be able to move the ball forward. And you have to go with your instincts as an entrepreneur of what's the right information, what's the wrong information. But the other thing is the hustle. Grant, you got to remember, he was a drug addict, and that's a certain personality type. That's a obsessive compulsive kind of a, over the top,
overstimulate. Yeah.
Right. So he now replaces all that with work. Yes. So for him to stay healthy, he has to keep working and keep doing these things. And for him, that's his way of coping. Right. And he'll tell you he'll tell you he's insecure, immature, and all that stuff. Yeah. Those types of things. So that's what keeps him grounded, keeps him on track, keeps him out of trouble. Yeah. If he didn't have everything, he might be right back where he was. You never know. So that's how he keeps that from happening and manifesting back in his life. But I didn't do that. I mean, when I was doing when I had the most companies, the most revenues from those companies, doing the most real estate deals in my career, I had the most time on my hands. I could leave for months, 6 months. Everything would be firing, probably better than it was when I was around meddling with everything, Yeah. So that's really the true mark of a great leader. How well does your organization run without you?
Right.
And whenever I brought somebody on board or hired somebody, I would ask them a few questions, things like that. And then they would want to start asking questions, say, don't ask me, go ask my people. I would leave the building. Right. My people knew it. I was like, be honest, tell them exactly how you feel, exactly what it's like to be here. Yeah. And, and that's how that worked whenever I was interviewing people and bringing them in the organization. And nobody ever said no after talking to my team. Everybody was like, man, I can't wait to start here. And nobody ever left. People were removed, but nobody ever left.
Yeah. That's awesome. And again, back to episode number 1 this morning. If you haven't seen it, folks, we talked about going from nothing to building an empire. Really Greg Dickerson's story. And again, Greg's at the level where he knows these people. And Grant's is a story that a lot of people look at, to saying, again, right from a drug addict, from a car salesman to, certainly an entertainer.
He's not unique. So another good friend of mine who's a best-selling author, he's the #1 sales trainer for new home sales in the country. and he travels around speaking to them. He was a heroin addict, and he was living in my community, heroin addict, and he was down and out. And one day, he was just talking to God, and he's like, I'm sick of this. And he got up, and just like Forrest Gump, he got up and ran. And literally he was like shooting up, and he just said, I'm done with that. He got up and in that moment and just ran. He ran for, I don't know, 5 miles or something. And that was it. He never went back. And from that point on, he poured into himself. He developed his, skills as a salesperson, became one of the top salespeople for real estate in the area with one of the largest home building companies who I hired a bunch of people from to build my company. He trained all their salespeople, was a leader. Then he started writing books and doing seminars and training. And, he still travels around the country today. But again, work. He replaced that. And he's the one that told me, he said, look, addicts are obsessive compulsive. He said, we have to replace that with something. And he said, for me, it's this. I write the books, I train, I teach, I coach. He's still out there today as one of the top salespeople. And he's actually one of my testimonials who I gave one idea that turned into a $500,000 real estate deal for him. I always say, all you need is one idea, one technique, one system that can be the game changer, lights out for you the rest of your life financially, vocationally, spiritually, whatever it is. All it takes is one new idea. That's why I always say, be a seeker of wisdom, because you never know where that idea or that inspiration is going to come from. He and I were having a conversation about a real estate deal he was doing, and it made him $500,000 on that deal because I had, one book recommendation I gave him on this technique from a tax standpoint. So look, here's what you need to do. Go get this book. It'll tell you how to do it. And it made him $500,000 on that deal.
Do you want to give him a shout out name? I don't think we've named him. Or no.
Yeah, Myers Barnes.
Myers Barnes. There you go. Awesome.
Yeah. He's one of the top. He is the top foremost expert on new home sales in the country. He trains, KB Homes,
right?
Pulte.
That's awesome.
All those.
Very, very cool. Well, this is a lot of fun, folks. A couple examples of people starting from nothing and building empires. I love the Grant Cardone story. I really love the fact that he's worked his wife Elena into the discussions. I was lucky enough to interview Elena once, and they definitely are a power couple. So I don't know if you've spoken with Elena before.
No, never have. Just Grant.
Yeah, she's pretty interesting. Very, very interesting lady. So Greg, how can people find you?
GregDickerson.com. So, he's GC, I'm GD, GregDickerson.com. Everything's there. It's really funny. It's the same kind of logo kind of thing going on, colors and all that. Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you very much, Greg. This has been a lot of fun.